So let's complete the conversation that Todd started with us on variables. Let's talk about scope. Let's talk about double equal versus triple equal. We've already seen the equal. We'll talk about that. And it really is very different. It's one of the things I see confuses students a lot. And I understand why, because it's like, what's the difference? Okay. We'll look at undefined and null, and we'll talk just a second about garbage collection. So your task here is to code along with me. And then afterwards, as I previewed in the first video, I want you to play around with this code, write some new code to help you understand these concepts, because that's really when you learn. Okay. All right. So I have open my terminal. Okay. Sorry, my dev tools, and I get some of this other stuff inside of dev tools that you probably don't get because I'm running screen capture. That's the only reason. So let's just look at the code, right? And we can look at the code here, right? Or we can look at the code by going over to sources, going over to scripts, looking at main. We can look at it here. Now, I like looking at it depending on what I'm doing, because I'm going to show you later how to use these dev tools to walk through your code. Really, really important. But for today, let's just do this. So we've set up a variable, right? We've done the let, which we know about the scoping is better scoped with let. Don't use var. Okay, so just if you want to put that in your notes, right? Don't use var. var is one of the things we are saying, please don't use it anymore. It's hoisted, and hoisted just means, and Todd talked about this a little bit, is where it's declared, and it's just harder to kind of find issues. And this is where JavaScript in its native mode is trying to be a little more nicely acting. Okay. All right. So we have a variable with a string, a variable with a number, variable. So we have three variables declared and assigned here. And remember, he talked about that. And now this equal is the only way we can do that, assigning, declaring, and assigning, right? So remember that if we just said, right, if we just set up, we said let something, right? We said let new var, right? All we're doing there is declaring it, but it's when we actually say equals, right? Something. And by the way, in JavaScript, you can also use, and notice I don't use semicolons. I don't. I stopped using them about a year ago, and I haven't gone back because I love it. So the other thing is you can also either use double or single quotes unless there's a specific need. And I tend to kind of sometimes interchange them based on what I'm doing. Right. So, but down here, now I haven't included this new variable down in here. I use something a little different called template strings. Template strings are really helpful because what it allows you to do is, and versus the concatenate that you saw, like we have some text and then plus and then something else. Going forward, I would say play around with this, and these are backticks. And then what this is these $ curly braces allow you to do both JavaScript commands, right, which you learned about type of. So this is just the same command but run inside a template string. And then in here, what I did is I just outputted the value of whatever was in my name, right? So in this case, it just showed the value of. Notice how DevTools here actually will tell you which line these are, which is really helpful at times because it will help you debug when you have errors in your code. So get used to that. And so now my age, type of my age, right? Okay, so age in this case, right, is a number. All right, so these are kind of the standard, just know what they are. Absolutely, you can reassign them, but remember, you can't do this, right? If we're using, I'm going to take that off, const, right? My const equal. Now, whatever I want to give to this value, it doesn't matter. It's not going to make me, declare it, but whatever I put in there is the way it is going to get declared in memory. Okay, so let's say 42, right? You know the joke. If you don't, look it up. Okay, so if I have const of 42, right, then I can't say my const, right, equals 43. Now, it looks like I can, but if I jump over to my dev tools inside the live server, right? It says no, an assignment of a constant variable. You can't do that. Because const says no once you, and by the way, it's in general, I just generally say, kind of going forward, unless you think you're going to redefine or assign a variable, use const. It's just easier and it makes your code a bit more sustainable. Okay. All right, so those are the kind of basic types that we have. Now let's talk about scope. Scope is really interesting because scope does allow you to do what we couldn't, because we're working right now out on the global, right? So this is what we call global scope. But in JavaScript, we will very quickly learn how to write block of if blocks, okay, if expressions and functions and other structures that allow us to have block scope. So just a simple one would say if true, if something's true, right? Now, notice how it's giving me these little errors. It's like, hey, wait a minute. And it's actually TypeScript that got turned on inside JavaScript, inside of VS Code, which is kind of cool. So it's actually just telling me this, hey, you need to actually create, and I'm using a keyboard new to me, if something's true, right? Now we're going to learn about different ways using operators to determine if something is true or false, and we'll learn more about this, but this is just creating a simple block scope, okay? So if something is true, it doesn't, we could say if it's false, because these are just booleans, and really what I'm showing you here is introducing the if concept, but also I could say constant, my constant here, right, equals, right? Let's just do the same thing, 42. And then could I console log, right? My constant here. Now, in this case, I'm console logging within here. And this is not a good example because let's actually change the value to 43. That makes more sense, right? So you can, because this is block scoped and that variable is existing only really in that block. And that's where garbage collection kind of comes in. You don't have to think about, and garbage collection is basically where it frees up the memory that's allocated once that variable or expression is used. And so you don't have to think about it. But if you're doing other programming languages, you actually do, which is one of the reasons JavaScript's awesome to learn, because you don't have to think about these things. Now it's good to know about them. But let's just end with, not end, but now that's a scope, right? That's why we can do it. It's within the scope of this block. So we could do all kinds of stuff in here because it's within this curly brace that's in an if statement that's saying true, which by the way, it doesn't matter. True actually means, right, it's going to run. By the way, if I put false here, here's the question. Even before I do it, if I put false here, will it output anything to the console for this right here, which is my const is 43? And the answer is no, because if false, and again, we'll see how to write expressions that either resolve the true or false, right? We'll see that. And by the way, notice what also happened here. VS Code kind of tried to give you a little hint, right? Notice true. Means it's going to run, right? So, and in here, right, we'll learn, right? And then we'll learn how to write functions and other stuff. But I just want you to see this. Okay, so now, and I'm just going to, just for a minute, and you can do the same. I'm going to comment that code out just to have it, just to show you. And so now let's move on, right, to the equal versus the triple equal, double equal versus the triple equal. And I will just tell you, in general, you use a triple equal unless you have a specific need. Okay, so let's say this. Let's go console.log. Now, this is where we start to see the differences clearly between the initialization, right, and then the actual comparison of values. So if I said my age was double equal to my name, okay, what do you think? Is it equal? Now, in this case, you'd start to understand the differences by looking at the output. So let's just go look, right? And it's false. It's not. Of course it's not, because it's a different type. okay? And it's a different value. But check out what will happen, because we know we can do this, right? If I was to go up here on my age and type 59, it's true. And this is where I can just hear Todd complaining. Why is that true? Well, because what happens is when you use double equal, it's actually going to try to convert. It's going to try to, JavaScript thinks it's helping you and it's not. Okay. So, how can we actually do a true comparison is we do triple equal? Because what are we going to say now, right now, that's false. That's what we would expect to see. Because my age, is it strict, and this is called strictly equal. So I've given you a reference here and I want you to check it out, right? On these references, right? On this one, because it gives you a little more explanation and it helps you when you start thinking about writing some of your own code. You don't have to know all of this, but just get a general idea. We're going to talk about undefined and null in a minute, okay? But just FYI. And so start understanding the different, matter of fact, let's do this. Let's just copy this line, right? And then let's do here so you can see that going back to the dev tools, right? This is true. This is true when it's just, and you can see, let's talk about the differences. Let's actually give it the right words here, right? So the double, does it give you, because I know the triple equal is always called strictly equal, right? And I think it's just equal. The equality operator is double, and the strictly equality operator is triple. But just going forward, generally, you're using equal to assign a value. Not generally, you are. That's the only way to do it. And then you're using triple equal to compare, is it equal, right? And in this case, we'll call it strictly equal. But if you ever see this, try to understand why you would see the output that we are seeing here. Okay, let's move on to undefined. Okay, so now let's come up here and do another one. Now let's say let my var. Now let's do console.log, right? And actually, let's just make our life a little bit easier. I'm going to copy this content right here, right? And then I'm going to say my var, type of my var. There we go. Let's go over here. So in this case, var is undefined because we've declared it. Sorry, we've declared it. We haven't initialized it. So generally, you do it all in the same line where you declare it and initialize it, but there may be a need somewhere. So that's where this type, because it hasn't been assigned anywhere, it hasn't been given a value, is undefined. Okay. So the other way we could do it is we could actually just set it as null, right? Now, and these are kind of things that as you see and as you do more JavaScript, notice now it's actually a type of object. It's because null is an empty value, but that empty value is actually an object. We haven't gotten to objects yet, but just know that that's true. So those are just some of the other types. Sometimes you see, not a lot. Again, the more JavaScript you write, the more you'll see that. Okay, so what have I done here on the last one? I talked about this already a little bit, right? Just it doesn't hurt to, like I said, like I really like what Todd said. You're often googling things, like read about memory management. That's actually what garbage collection is. When the first time you hear somebody talk about garbage collection and programming, it'd be like, what are you guys talking about? Well, we're just talking about the way it allocates and frees up memory, because imagine the amount of code that is run. And if you're no longer needing or using that code, or your execution doesn't require it, then we want to clean it up so it's not sitting out there. Okay, so what's your job? First, commit what we've just done, right? And at this point, I'm going to know that you know how to commit code. Here's the commit message I want, more on variables. And then and by the way, you can actually commit and you don't have to push until the very end. Okay. So once matter of fact, let's just do it together. This will be the last time, just because, tell me if you need help with this. Totally happy to help you out. Right. So I'm going to do git status. I'm going to say, oh, yeah, I got a new file. It is modified. Git add. I noticed Todd did, I think, dash add. I do git add. Let's just clear it. I think I already said this, but git add star. Okay, git commit, right? Now this is where I'm committing into my local repo, right? More on variables. Cool. All right. Now, at this point, you don't have to push yet to GitHub, right? Because what you're going to do is you're going to continue working. Your job now is to play around with the code, write code that helps you understand these concepts. Do a little research. You're going to want to. You're probably going to want to know, what do you want to see? Well, I want to see that you played around with these concepts. I want to see that you wrote some new code. I want to see that you extended what we introduced here so that you start to own that. Okay. Now, once you're ready and you do git push, right? Once you've written your code, let me just show you what this is going to look like. So I'll go to GitHub. Oh, my GitHub. It's weird. For those of you that know my classes, know I normally work in an organization, which is a GitHub kind of structure. So in this case, I'm going to go to commits, right? Here's the structure. We ended up using we didn't create a new folder. I still have that README file from before, but I want you to go to commits. And under commits, right, you should see, once you're done, matter of fact, you will see these two most likely and other commits you did before. But again, this point going forward, I tell you the commits I want. And this is the URL that you will pretty much give me, unless I specify a further directory or another repo, which we might play with, right? This is the URL that when you submit this assignment, you're going to give me that URL, okay? And that URL for this work should have a commit, more on variables, and another commit after you've played with this code. Let me be clear, my variable code, meaning the stuff that you played with. Okay, hope this helps. Hope this clears up some things. If you have any questions, great time to ask. You can ask here. If you happen to be on Discord, another great way to place to ask me. All right, talk to you later.